The man every filmmaker has a reason to fear.
Thank you, Anant, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to all of you for being here today. Thank you, of course, to Sri KamalHassan ji. It's a great honor and a great, great pleasure. Thank you to every one of our distinguished guests, and to Mr. K. Ramesh, of course, who has made all this possible in collaboration with Amaryllis. What I do is very simple. I put my very small feet in the very large footsteps of giants who have gone before me. And they are the true holders of this tradition of storytelling. All I am is a very distant descendant, trying to do in my own small way whatever I can. The Rig Veda literally translates as the book of knowledge, and this great wealth of knowledge that's been handed down to us from generation to generation continues to inspire and enrich our lives in ways that we often don't even know. One example is this great story of 10 kings, or Dasharajan as it's called in the Rig Veda. And I discovered this story many, many years ago and was fascinated by how inspiring and how action-packed it is. I mean, today we are in the age of 4K and 3D and Ultra HD. But back then, in the age of the Vedic civilization, they were far ahead of us. They looked at the world not just in 3D, but in a complete multi-dimensional proportion. And that perspective has somehow been forgotten or lost somewhere along the way. Sri Kamalji was just telling me about how just today proof has been found of so many great legends, and proof is constantly being found of so many great stories and legends and historical tales that we have believed to be tales that are now being proven to be true. I can't tell you, for example, whether the story in the Rig Veda called Dasharajan, I can't tell you exactly where it happened, on which grassy field, in the shadow of which exact mountain. But what I can tell you is that it must have happened. And whenever anyone asks me, or asks, I think, any writer who studies the Vedas or the epics, did these things really happen? Did these people really exist? I have a simple question to ask in return. There is no word in Sanskrit for fiction. So why would they lie? What reason would these storytellers or gurus or wonderful minds of that age have to lie about it? Whether it happened in exactly the way they describe it or not, the fact is, it happened in some form, and they reported it as they knew it to happen. We have to believe that because they had no paid news in those days. They had no gossip columns. They had no reason, as I said, to create fiction. And so we have to believe that there has to be truth at the center of that great story. And I approach all my retellings with that belief that there is a truth in it. Whether the truth is spiritual, whether it is the gift of knowledge being passed on in a nutshell, in a condensed form, is something that greater minds than I can analyze and study. What I found in Ten Kings is something that I'm constantly discovering in all our epics, is that these are direct television channels, if I may use the term, to an ancient past. Through these channels, we can actually switch on the Rig Veda, if we are able to tune our minds to it, or the Ramayana, or the Mahabharata, or a great classic like Ponniyin Selvan, or any of these great legends and myths, so-called myths, and we can actually look through that television screen of history and imagination and look back into this past and see a world that once existed, great legends that once lived and walked the earth. And to me, that is the most exciting television possible. It's the biggest screen experience that one can possibly have, not just in 4K and 3D, but in the powerful cinema of the mind, which can't be replicated on any screen even today. And that is the greatness of our heritage and our culture, which I think still is waiting to be discovered. I've plucked out maybe one single pearl here or there, a few minor gems, a few larger ones. That's been my privilege, and I'm honored to be the person who happened to discover that gem or that oyster and that pearl. But there are hundreds and thousands more, and I constantly hope that my very minor attempts, my very humble struggles to tell these great stories will lead people again to discover for themselves the wealth, the ocean of stories. And I said their stories is the word that I use, but they are real in some form. So I hope to lead people to discover these great stories and these great happenings that happened, that occurred all these years ago, and discover for themselves what a wonderful, wonderful channel that we have to the past that we can discover through the pages of these great works. Ten Kings is one small new attempt to do the same thing. I hope it finds some grace, gives some reading pleasure to all of you. And I will leave you to discover for yourself what the book is about, what the story is about. And I'll just leave you with that thought, and that hopefully the key to that television channel, which I hope we'll all switch on someday. Thank you.
Mr. Ramesh, please join us on stage. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. 10 Kings. Out for the world to see, read and admire.